From the beginning of this year is that North Korea has not continued testing. So this is something to watch closely. Do they resume testing?
President Trump called out his predecessors in Washington for slow progress on North Korea, while signaling the U.S. may be willing to talk with the regime.
They want to talk. And we want to talk also only under the right conditions. Otherwise, we're not talking. You know, they've been talking for 25 years. Other presidents should have solved this problem long before I got here. And they've been talking for 25 years. And you know what happened? Nothing.
With the Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang now finished, all eyes are again refocusing on the North Korean nuclear threat. New sanctions announced Friday target individuals and companies in an effort to deter the North Korean regime's long-range missile development programs. Just back from the Olympics closing ceremony overseas, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders reiterated the administration's priorities.
Let us be completely clear. Denuclearization must be the result of any dialogue with North Korea. Until then, the United States and the world must continue to make it known that North Korea's nuclear and missile programs are a dead end.
Tensions spiked late last year, with Trump referring to the North Korean leader as Rocket Man during a UN speech in September. Kim Jong-un hit back, calling the president's Asia trip in November, quote, a warmonger's visit. How close North Korea is from successfully launching a nuclear attack remains an open question, analysts say.
The one thing that's a little different from the beginning of this year is that North Korea has not continued testing. So this is something to watch closely. Do they resume testing? If they do resume testing, then I think we're back to business as usual, unfortunately.
Despite warnings from the North, South Korea and the U.S. are scheduled to hold joint military exercises later this spring.
Seoul's Unification Ministry announced on Friday that North and South Korea would hold joint working-level talks this week in the Panmunjom Joint Security Area that is part of the Inter-Korean Borders Demilitarized Zone. South Korean defense officials have reiterated that joint U.S.-South Korean military exercises, delayed during the Winter Olympics, will resume with an announcement expected before April. After a New Year's Day address by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, the two Koreas met at a senior level and competed jointly in the Olympics. Kim's sister, Kim Yo-jong, attended the opening ceremonies and delivered a letter to South Korea's President Moon Jae-in proposing a summit. The North has not tested a ballistic missile since late November or a nuclear device since September. Pyongyang views the joint exercises, conducted annually, as provocative and a prelude to invasion. Grant Newsham, a former Marine officer and senior research fellow at the Japan Forum for Strategic Studies, tells VOA's Victor Beattie they are vital to maintaining the skills to conduct effective operations.
Plus, you have a lot of new troops and new officers who come to participate, and they need to learn how to do it as well. So this sort of routine, ongoing, continuous exercising it really is essential, just as it would be for a baseball team. You've got to keep practicing. Plus, there's also, of course, a political, psychological aspect to this in terms of demonstrating commitment on both sides, the United States and South Korea. So there's a very practical, operational reason for doing these. And there's also an important political reason as well.
Are these defensive or offensive in design? North Korea obviously considers them a prelude to invasion.
Of course they will, but these are essentially defensive. This is the U.S. and South Korea are operating on a strategic defensive when it comes to the Korean Peninsula. The best way to look at this is defensive. Of course, everything that the Americans do, everything the South Koreans do, is viewed by North Korea as the prelude to an invasion. But one doesn't need to be privy to inside information to know that nobody on the U.S. side or the South Korean side is really thinking very seriously about invading North Korea. These particular exercises should be viewed as defensive in nature.
Will this end this short-lived rapprochement between the Koreas?
It won't help keep it going. I would expect that North Korea will sort of play rough again and probably cause some trouble. But then again, they have been very successful by holding out these lures, these sort of attractive sort of bait to South Korea, and I would imagine they will continue doing that, maybe mixing it, though, with some saber rattling as well. But certainly the love fest that we've seen at the Olympics, I wouldn't expect that to continue much longer after the closing ceremonies.
The official North Korean KCNA news agency last week denounced the intention to resume the military exercises as a, quote, wild act of ruthlessly trampling even a small sprout of peace.
Is Washington and Pyongyang on the same page in terms of what they mean by talks? Can South Korea play the role of mediator between the two? Woo Jung-hee sheds light on what the regime may want through dialogue and how Seoul plans to communicate with the U.S.
North Korea's delegation to the closing ceremony of the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics repeatedly said the North is willing to talk to the U.S., and they laid out no particular preconditions. It's been pretty rare for North Korea to openly and clearly mention a will to talk, but the U.S. is standing firm. Talks can happen only if they're for denuclearization.
North Korea, who, by the way, wants to talk, as of last night, you heard that, they want to talk. And we want to talk also only under the right conditions.
So President Trump has thrown the ball back to Pyongyang. If the regime wants to sit down with the U.S., then Kim Jong-un will have to decide whether he's willing to discuss denuclearization. But experts believe what North Korea means by talks would not be about giving up its nuclear program, but rather a nuclear freeze.
North Korea may be ready to discuss, first, halting its nuclear and missile tests, and then accepting IAEA inspections and stopping its nuclear facilities. I believe North Korea will reject discarding its nuclear weapons by putting forth conditions that are difficult to meet.
But the expert added that this could be enough for the U.S. to see that conditions for dialogue with North Korea are in place, as the regime's test firing of ICBMs has been a tangible threat for the U.S. On Monday, President Moon urged the North to show a will to denuclearize, but at the same time said Washington should lower the threshold for talks with Pyongyang. To create a greater room for dialogue between Washington and Pyongyang, diplomatic sources say Seoul plans to send its top nuclear envoy to Washington as soon as this week. The goal would be to find areas of common interest between the two sides and ultimately enable any types of talks step by step. Before and during the Olympics, Pyongyang was reluctant to speak with U.S. delegates, saying it wouldn't use the Olympics as a political opportunity. And just last week, the North's state-run news agency reported that the target of the regime's nuclear arms is the United States. But whether the North is really ready to discuss denuclearization with the U.S. in earnest is still up for debate.
Kim Myong-chul apparently did not mention the word denuclearization of nuclear weapons yet. So we don't know whether North Korea's willingness to talk with the United States is about nuclear weapons of North Korea, or as it has pushed before, that any talks is possible if nuclear weapon is not the agenda of the talks with the United States.
South Korea has been keen to keep up the dialogue momentum with North Korea and eventually have that lead to talks between Washington and Pyongyang. But whether the North is actually willing to meet Washington's condition and discuss its nuclear program remains to be seen.
Exercise Foal Eagle is ready to kick off, but soldiers from the 2nd Stryker Brigade combat team couldn't wait to send rounds downrange with their Republic of Korea Army counterparts.
What we're doing here today is we're acclimatizing to the Korean environment and working with the ROK Army in a partnership. Basically, today what we're doing is reacting to contact and taking out a bunker. They're showing us some of their tactics, and we're showing them some of our tactics.
Even though each nation is prepared and ready to show off their individual capabilities, they stress the learning process involved with working together.
We get to learn some of their battle drills and skills, and as well as they get to learn some of our stuff. So it's kind of interacting, and everyone's it's a learning process.
That learning process is vital in strengthening this partnership.
It makes it stronger. I mean, if they understand how we operate and we understand how they operate, then if something were to happen, we'd both be able to interact with each other without any casualties like that.
But for the task at hand, how did the soldiers fare at showcasing their firepower?
I think we did awesome. Just killing targets all day. That's it, killing targets.
And for the soldiers of the Warrior Brigade, the reception they've received from their host nation counterpart only furthers this partnership on and off the battlefield.
When we got here, I was really impressed with their professionalism. I believe that they're great hosts and they didn't treat us with any malice or anything like that. They also kept an open mind while we also did the same.
Reporting from the Republic of Korea, I'm Army Sergeant Chris Hammond.